And I'm calling to order tonight's meeting of Yountville's Zoning and Design Review Board. I will note, Sandra, that all members are present, and I will ask for unanimous consent to approve the agenda. Hearing no objection, we'll proceed directly to approval of minutes. I'm going to ask that the minutes be approved in two separate actions. The first action, I will ask for a correction to item number 4, which notes all in favor. Only Board Member Wennerberg and I voted in favor of adopting those minutes. It was 2-0. Reflecting the fact that he and I were the only people present at the referenced meeting. Are there any corrections for the balance of the minutes? Hearing no corrections, I will ask for unanimous consent to adopt the minutes, the balance of the minutes. Hearing no objection, we'll move along to public comment. Jan, would you like to talk about anything besides why you're otherwise here? I'm good. Outstanding. Nothing on the consent item. We will proceed directly to V Wine Cellars outdoor lighting proposal.
Good evening. The item before you is design review for outdoor patio lighting for the wine cellar, and the item is before you as a discussion item for your review and comment, and those comments will be taken to Town Council, who will be the decision-making body since this is design review for a commercial business and property. And so what is proposed is exterior string lighting that would be suspended over the V Wine Cellar patio that's adjacent to the east elevation of the V Marketplace structure. And I don't seem to be connected here, so you won't see my PowerPoint. You'll just have to visualize it, which you all should have been out to the site, so you know the patio that we're talking about on that corner of the building. And the existing patio is surrounded by an approximately 3-foot tall metal fence. And what the applicant proposes is attaching 6 different 9.3-foot tall wooden support posts to the fence, and which would be spaced approximately 7 feet on center to support these string lights. The lights would additionally be attached to the building with some eye hooks that are attached to the V Marketplace structure. And the sketch that you have in the packet illustrates the design element and how these would be attached to the metal fence. They basically clamp on either side of it and be connected in that manner. The lights would be strung between the posts and the building, and they would crisscross that patio about 12 different times. The proposed lights are approximately 12 watt bulbs, and the lights themselves are spaced about 1 foot on center. And the town's lighting ordinance provides standards for lights, and it requires that lights be fully cut off and downcast. However, this is a standard that generally applies to building and site lighting, and string lighting of this nature that is of a very low wattage is exempt from those strict standards. It's more of ambient lighting rather than site lighting, and it's expected to be within the requirements as proposed. Staff does note, however, that the lights crisscross what is a rather small patio 12 times, creating a sort of tightly wrapped appearance, and perhaps more lighting than is strictly necessary. And so staff is proposing that 2 of the 6 wooden posts be eliminated, which will also improve what may be considered a fenced-in appearance in that patio area. And so, as I mentioned, this is an item for your discussion and comment, and I will be forwarding your comments to Town Council. The applicant is here as well to give a presentation and answer questions.
Any questions of staff before we hear from the applicant?
I have a question. Which 2 posts do you propose eliminating?
We're proposing the 2 on the north end, where it is less deep and the patio takes on a different shape. However, it's open for your consideration to eliminate other posts
So there wouldn't be any lighting at that end of the terrace?
Not any direct overhead lighting, but the ambient light from the rest of the strings. Staff was in discussion with the business owner regarding our recommendation that 2 of the posts be removed, and he was open and amenable to that suggestion.
Was there any discussion with the closest business owner or at Pacific Blues right across the little pathway?
No, there was not.
Rob, I spoke to him today.
Oh, okay.
He seems fine with it.
He's okay.
He's very excited about it. He was very positive about it. Excuse me, I don't want to put words in his mouth. He was very positive about it.
More questions for staff?
Not me.
Jen?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are y'all? I did bring show and tell that is similar, just to get the idea, because the drawing doesn't really depict the lighting. I'm going to propose to Scott that he spends a little bit more money than on this type of, looks like Christmas lights to me. But we didn't have a chance before he left and put me in charge of this meeting that to get that. If you would go to Bottega, they would have a black string, very simple, very almost like a basic electrical cord, but the lights would be of this nature. So very low voltage ambient lighting, really only for people sitting on the patio. There is the existing overhead high pressure sodium that's been there for a very long time. That does give it, sort of an overcast glow, but it's very high up and doesn't make the space intimate. I mean, that's the idea that he's trying to achieve here, is just to give it a little bit more intimacy. Scott had the opportunity to fly out of town to maybe present a sponsorship opportunity for his Sense Yountville, so I said I'd step in. There is a question of the color of the staining, again, of which I was not aware, but we will come up with a beautiful combination rust brick red that would be in keeping. Obviously, I think all of you know the aesthetics of the property are number one importance to me, so it'll be a color that we can present to Sandra for her approval. So I don't know what more I could say.
Merry Christmas.
Pretty simple. Merry Christmas.
Questions for the applicant?
So these lights will swag. They'll sort of hang in sort of an arc.
Yeah, I think at the beginning they are probably pretty tight, but they all tend to, that type of lighting tends to bow just a little bit as they stretch out and give it a little bit more, of a festive feel, if you will.
Jan, what's the intended use of the space?
The space has always been intended and used as a meeting area for guests. It is also used for events.
For wine tasting?
For wine tasting.
Okay.
And events. Our use permit goes in line with events that are produced through the hotels. And quite frequently, if we have a group meeting or a group dinner or a winemaker dinner, the dinner will be taking place inside the wine cellar, and they'll do a short reception out in front in the evenings. But during the day, it's just a lovely place to sit and have a glass of wine and watch the world go by.
I had 2 more questions. One is, where's your power source?
The power source is at the edge of the wine cellar, so it would be the southeast
corner?
Southeast corner. Mm-hmm.
And so that power's already there?
Yeah, we put it in expressly for this purpose. It's just taken him a while to decide what exactly he wanted to do.
And is it in a V configuration because of V Marketplace?
Of course.
Jen, were you part of the discussion on why they chose wood as the support mechanism?
I was. It's the most economical. I don't have a problem with going back to our fence builder and asking him if metal posts could be erected and the fence would support it. It's a pretty heavy-duty fence, so I do imagine, and it would give it a little bit more continuity and a little bit more integrity, maybe, to have it as metal, and Scott's perfectly amenable to that.
Thanks.
My feeling is you're probably going to have to do that because wood is not going to work. It's not going to be able to support even the small load. I think it'll pull the fence over. The way it's got a little notch at the top, it's essentially a hinge condition. It's going to be nailed there. It's,
Yeah,
and then
I
you're-
can see that having not as much integrity over time. The fence is as solid as they come.
Well, it's also a 9-foot piece of wood, and
I think that was the concern about the metal. You know, if it's a 9-foot piece of metal, does that add, you know,
well, I think you
structure
probably
to
can.
it? Or
I think you can probably secure. I mean, the fence isn't going to really hold up that 9 feet. It's going to be whatever you do at the base of the post, and so I think you could probably secure a metal post, and it would be more in keeping than you can a piece of wood.
yeah, we'll just have to talk with our fence guy. I'm sure it can be worked out, and it would look better. I agree.
Any more questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So we'll make comments to forward to council. Who'd like to begin?
Well, I can make some comments. I actually think that you need those extra posts to confine the space, the ones that you took away, because you are kind of defining that whole area. I would keep all the posts there, and if they like the V for the V Marketplace, I don't really have a problem with that. My bigger issue really is with the supports, because essentially all you have is the statement of these posts that are holding this thing up. It's like a street light, a street post. And I think it needs to have some kind of articulation and some kind of detail that maybe is more in keeping with the quality of the fence itself, which is an ornate iron fence. And a wood post is just not in keeping, in my mind, with that. So I would look at making these posts more elegant than they are, and you could do essentially something that's 4 pieces of iron in some configuration that would really secure it. It's not that it's going to be a lot of load being pulled on this thing. I mean, it's a Christmas tree decoration, but essentially it is 9 feet tall. It does have some integrity issues, and I think that you can deal with the integrity and you can also deal with the elegance of it, because I think this is an opportunity to do that. But I would say I'm fine with the V configuration. I'm fine with all the posts that are there, but I don't like the design of the posts. And I honestly think that they'd fall over. Not the first year, but after a few winters they would be gone. And there's bigger liability than spending a little bit more money on iron.
I'll go next. I echo the same thing Rob said. One thing I would say would be, please do upgrade the lights. I hate those ones that look like Christmas lights, and you can just get kind of the more industrial kind. And
That's true.
I think it would look a lot better and hold up a lot better. So those are all my comments.
I agree with that.
I'd go along with those ideas. I think the wood might be nice for a while, but it would wear rapidly. I think some kind of metal, wrought iron, something like that would look a little more sophisticated, a little less obtrusive. Hate to see the lines sagging down after just a couple of summers, but I think that would be okay.
I agree with everyone. I think they should be metal, but I think all 6 would look good there after walking that space, but that's just me walking it and getting a visual with it, so.
I recommend the council approve the application with the following exceptions. 1, the post should be of a material and finish to match the existing fence. Secondly, the exemption for lamps less than 60 watts refers to the shading. I find nothing in the ordinance that allows for an exception from the perimeter measurement. As I've said repeatedly before, I don't think we here sitting at this table can, in this position, measure foot candles, and I am disinclined to approve any exterior lighting application that does not include photometrics. So I would encourage the applicant to prepare a photometric study showing compliance with those standards. Thanks. We will move along to sign permit for Hotel Yountville.
This item is a sign permit application for redesign project signage and directional signage for Hotel Yountville, and that's the renamed Hotel Yountville, which is formerly known as Yountville Inn. The new identification sign will be located at the primary entrance in the same location that the existing sign is located, and the new sign will replace that sign, which is planned to be demolished. The two new directional signs will identify the parking lot access in the new event center, and those are proposed for the south driveway on Washington and also the back driveway that's off Champaign Drive. And the proposed identification sign is a 30-square-foot sign that would be set atop a stone base and set into that base by approximately 24 inches for a total height of about 4.5 feet. And it's shown here both in the drawing and in a photo simulation on the property. The sign would consist of a 30-square-foot aluminum cabinet that's painted matte black and which would feature a fleur-de-lis watermark. The Hotel Yountville copy would be on a single line and would feature 4.9-inch to 6-inch tall letters that would be mounted to the cabinet and offset by half-inch posts. The sign copy represents a little over 4 square feet of that proposed sign, and as a point of reference, the existing copy on the Yountville Inn sign amounts to about 14.5 square feet, and that's on 2 lines of copy, and is one of the reasons why it represents a larger area. This sign will be lighted with 2 existing ground-mounted lights that are focused up and onto the existing sign. The proposed directional signs, as I mentioned, are located on the site plan showing the locations, and these signs would be 4-square-foot signs that are set atop a 7.5-square-foot stone base. These signs would match the design element of the primary identification sign in terms of the stone base, the matte black cabinet, and then the color and font of the lettering. Both of these signs would be set back greater than 10 feet from the street surface. For parking lot B, it's set back approximately 14 feet, and it's in line with the existing stop sign that stops traffic entering the public right-of-way. The other sign is set back approximately 10 square feet, and it's a little harder to tell where that will be located since the photo simulation was at an earlier point in construction, but as the site now features a perimeter stone wall in that area, and this proposed sign would be located in front of that wall in that planter that is just raw soil at this time. The copy on both of these directional signs will feature either parking lot B, parking lot C, and both will include the event center sign with the directional arrow. And the copy on these signs is 2 inches for the first line and 1.6 inches for the second line. The signs are regulated by the sign ordinance as to number and area, and the area calculations included in the sign ordinance are one half square foot of signage for each lineal foot of building frontage. And in this case, this is a large property that has over 400 lineal feet of frontage, and which would allow up to 200 square feet of signage. However, there's another limitation in the staff report that no sign should exceed 25 square feet. And in this instance, the 30 square foot sign does exceed that standard. It is important to note that because this is a monument sign that has a frame or a background, that entire background is included. And to compare a sign that would be directly on the building or directly to one of the existing stone fences that would not have a frame like this one does, the signage would be calculated at the 4 square feet standard. So it's the background here and the desire to create a proportional base and sign that is the reason it meets that reaches 30 square feet. The 30 square feet could be allowed if an exception were found to apply to the property, and though the exception for signs are nearly identical to the findings for a variance. With one exception, it provides that the exceptional circumstances can include the type or design of the sign involved. But otherwise, those strict variance standards apply, that it's something unique to the property, that it's not the result of a decision of the owner, and that it doesn't create a grant of special privilege. And staff has trouble making those findings, so I haven't included those in the staff report for approval. But it is possible for an exception to be granted if you find it meets what are known as strict variance standards. Otherwise, the height of the signs is in keeping with the height of monument signs because they are set 10 feet. They're not within the 10-foot setback. They're 10 feet and greater than that. And the 2 directional signs are 3.8 square feet, whereas the primary sign is 4.5 feet, not square feet. Also, the lighting for the signs is regulated by the lighting ordinance, and it provides that the amount of lighting should be the minimum necessary to illuminate the sign. And the goal is to direct and focus the light on that sign without having it spill over onto adjacent properties or buildings. And in this case, the 2 lights, ground-mounted lights for the existing Yountville Inn sign will be reused and directed and focused on this light sign. The other 2 signs are single source lights that are low watt that will also be directed onto the light. So staff is proposing or recommending approval of this sign package with the exception that the main identification sign be reduced to 25 square feet.
Thank you, Sandra. Questions for staff?
I have a question about the 30 square feet.
Yes.
Is that the total of the 3 signs?
No. The 2 directional signs, sorry I didn't mention this, are exempt from the sign calculation where they're 4 square feet or less. They serve as directional signage and a functional purpose.
Which would be the 2 parking lot signs? Okay.
So they're
And so
outside
the main
We're only
entrance-
considering the main sign for the square footage standard.
Okay.
But they're all considered under the design standard.
Okay. And so my second question is the proposed sign to replace the old sign the same size? Looks like it in the
It's
drawings.
approximately the same size. So the existing sign would be considered a
Almost
non-conforming
grandfathered
sign.
in and non-conforming.
When you replace a non-conforming sign, building, structure, anything, it's required to meet current standards. And that's why they would need to reduce it unless an exception can be found.
Unless they use that if they use the monument that's there now and put on their signage to that, then they would be allowed to do that. Is that correct? In other words, if they took that blade and put it on that, modified the Yountville Inn sign in some way, they'd be able to do that.
I would say that's a replacement of the sign, that's keeping the base, but the sign itself should then conform because it's entirely new. They're keeping the base, but they're replacing the sign.
Then the sign
I would
itself is
strictly
less than
interpret the
25
ordinance.
square, or 30 square feet, or 25 square feet.
No, the entire monument and base is greater than 30 square feet. The black metal cabinet with the sign face is the 30 square feet, and in this case, it would be the white cutout.
Oh, I see.
The
So
white
the
background.
black metal is 30 square feet. Okay.
The total size of that monument structure is 52.5 square feet.
If I may, I think I can partially answer this question. I think the key metric is the definition of display surface, which reads in pertinent part, the area of the sign shall be calculated by adding the outer dimensions of all faces capable of presenting a sign message excluding the standard and frame. The size of the monument itself, the square area of the letters themselves is immaterial. It's the face capable of presenting a sign.
So the face of the monument is the
The
potential sign?
Yes.
Okay, got
The
it.
logical extension would be we'd be measuring actually the width of the letters. So what matters is the face capable of supporting signage.
In this case, the face capable of supporting the sign is the metal cabinet that they're on. Okay, just following you.
Well, I have some questions. I would like to compliment the applicant on the graphics. They're very nice. There's one thing I don't understand, and I don't know if this is the time to ask it. Sandra, I guess I can ask you, and then it can come up later. But looking at the Hotel Yountville sign that's replacing the existing one there, it looks like the sign is proud of the stone, but on the side view, it looks like it's inside. So in other words, there's stone pilasters that come up on either side of that? Is that right? It's got to be that way. If
Well,
that side
it's not
elevation's
just the
right.
pilasters on either side, but it's the base beneath the sign. It's more that the sign is set into this.
No, I understand, but
Cut
so
out
the,
base.
the stone itself is like a U,
Yes,
and the sign is set in there.
yes.
Okay. I'll reserve the rest of my comments till later.
And I think the applicant had considered reusing that base, but that base wasn't going to work for the design that they came up with. It's more
understand.
advanced. It has nuances to it that make it more sophisticated that the other sign couldn't convey.
Further questions of staff? Would the applicant like to speak? Hi.
Hi, guys. I'm Dave Shapiro, and I'm the managing partner of Hotel Yountville. And this is basically my thing. Rochelle is with us from ASA Graphics, and who produced all the drawings. So I don't really have a presentation other than I think what we're doing is gorgeous, and if you saw the property, I think it's coming out beautifully. So I'm just patting myself on the back, only as to say that as a design review board, I think we're in keeping with the flavor and the spirit of Yountville. And so I can tell you my thinking on why we got to this place, which was we initially tried to reuse the existing sign. But because our logo, which is exactly the Hotel Yountville, runs linear and it's not a double-stacked logo, and we wanted to keep that consistency throughout the property and our graphics and everything. When you start running linear, we needed to stretch it, and we spent a lot of time out on the parking lot with mock-ups, and then the letters for Hotel Yountville became tiny itty-bitty, and they were like really, really hard to read, and it felt like the only way we could to do that would be to sort of I would have loved to have been able to reuse that sign because financially it would have been a little more cost effective, but you know, when you start patching stone together, everything looks mishmashy, and it was decided by ownership and myself that it was best just to, you know, just take that down and be a lot less expensive just to use brand new stone and rebuild something that's going to support that existing signage. And so to get the letters legible so it didn't look awkward and odd, that you have these tiny little letters going across. It felt like we needed to push it just a little bit more in more of a landscape mode rather than a two-lined version like what Hotel Yountville has here. And so that's why we decided just to push it just a little bit. But I kept the box in the same square foot ratio as the existing Hotel Yountville Inn sign, not realizing that wouldn't be grandfathered in. And, it certainly doesn't impose more. It is actually more elegant and less imposing. I think it's more legible. And let's see, what else can I say? Just for the record, there's actually 3 lights in the ground. One just is burnt out, and they just kind of flood the lights. So I just wanted to make that clear. But it doesn't change anything that Sandra said. And I think you said presented beautifully. So I would just like to see if you guys would give us a variance to keep the 30 square feet because of the fact that the actual square footage of the actual letters is actually smaller and less imposing than what we currently have. Any questions you have for me? Because that would be easier than rambling on.
Questions for the applicant?
And also, I have Rochelle here that can answer technical questions as far as the sign is concerned. Oh, sure. Do you mind if she?
Not at all. Just please come up to the microphone so we can record you.
Was involved in the original sign. I didn't realize the code had changed because that was all okay back then. You know, the people that are guests at the hotel are going to be looking for the hotel, so it's really important to have a legible letter. Excuse me, I'm allergy today. Coming from the freeway, they don't know where they're going, so a good 6-inch cap is important to us. For the visibility, and the same with the parking lot signs. Very important that the guests can find their way around. This is actually a very small square footage for lettering. It's just the orientation of their logo for the Hotel Yountville is so linear that, obviously it was the width that we had to improve on. We're not looking for a big, high, 8 or 10 foot letter. So that's just the other comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Anyhow,
Before we discuss, Sandra, can we jointly look at 1792-070 on page 493? And my question for you is the Yountville Inn sign lawfully existing?
It is, yes.
So I read this non-conforming portion of the sign ordinance to say, any sign lawfully existing at the effective date, blah, 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 shall be deemed to be legally non-conforming sign and may be continued except as provided for in tree regulations. And I read that has to do with landscapes, walls, and fences, and I think has more to do with heights that would obstruct pedestrian pathway. I'm looking for an opinion on why we can't rely upon this as a replacement. I've heard Bob describe that other legally non-conforming conditions can be replaced or remodeled. What's the trigger for this replacement?
This, if strictly construed, says that any existing sign may be continued. So that's why Yountville Inn sign may be continued. Where it's demolished and replaced, it sets a new and higher standard.
Okay.
And that generally applies to all non-conforming uses in town. If you have a shed in your backyard that you demolish and rebuild, you have to build it to setbacks and height standards. Perhaps we could more loosely interpret this.
But your opinion
provision
is that
here.
would establish a new precedent? Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you. Are we ready to try to craft a motion after some discussion?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start.
Please.
Quite frankly, I like the design. I like the look of it. It's a little bit more modern. That's fantastic. Walked around the property. It is looking great. I applaud you guys for that. I have difficulty making the exceptions. I do think that by tearing this down and completely creating a new sign, we'd have to come up with some exceptions. And quite frankly, this is the most prominent, for me, property in town because you come off California and you have practically drive into the parking lot. So I don't feel like that it has any, that people are going to have difficulty finding it, like the Bardessono Inn that's kind of off and they're having difficulty. Which brings up another point. I feel like if we make an exception here to allow for a larger sign, I could foresee Bardessono saying, hey, we want to put signs now on our large rammed earth walls, which would be larger than the 20-foot allowed. So I'm having a hard time making that exception.
Are we going left to right?
I guess I have one more thing. I really don't think black and matte black are neutral tones, but that's just a personal thing. So.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. One is the whole Yountville Inn, soon to be Hotel Yountville, sort of has this massive stone quality to it. And the way I read these drawings is that the base is really kind of wimpy for the major sign here. The two sides of the U are very narrow relative to the rest of it. And I think, it's the reality of actually building something like that. You start to use the stone that's cut an inch and a half thick. And that same is true with the blade signs that are in the parking lots. Look at how narrow those are. And this is this massive stone with this very narrow stone. Essentially, to make that thing stand up, you'd have to have an inch and a half veneer on either side of stone, and then some kind of steel on the inside to make it, be 3.5 feet tall. I don't think that works very well. I understand that you're trying to bring the stone back into the feeling of the inn, and I can go along with that. But I don't think it works for the blade signs. I think I would rather see just a sign that was of that same material or something, and just eliminate the stone in that. It's going to look kind of odd if it's built like that. I agree with Rob on the precedent of setting variances. I don't want to do that lightly, and I think that in this case you can replace Yountville Inn, this is my opinion, with your black sign, Hotel Yountville, and I think you may have to put it on two lines, which may be totally taboo in your mind, but I would say that you reuse that existing sign and use your elegant black with the letters that you have. And because I wouldn't recommend that we allow the variance for this sign. I actually think the other one's better. I'm done.
Anyone else care to make comments before we entertain motions?
I'm pretty much in agreement with the last two guys there.
I'll make a comment. I think what's presented here is amazing, given the fact I run by there every single day, and to see the development on there. I have to leave a little bit of a, I can't think of the right word, but I mean, I understand what's being said about the blade signs and everything, but I would assume that some sort of research and thought has gone into the process. And given all the rock work and all the work that's been done at the property, it looks very consistent to me. I mean, I pass by there every single day, ever since ground's been broken, to see the development there. I would hope, and I would like to respect what the business is doing with the fact, with the one linear sign for the Hotel Yountville as well. At the same time, I'm not for granting a variance either. I'd like to keep it, make it work within the 25 square feet. But I am not of the opinion that we need to go back to the old sign and force a square peg into a round hole as well. So
I will support a motion that approves the proposal as presented, provided the display area, that is, the black, is reduced to 25 square feet. So is there an effort to put forward that motion or a competing motion?
Just a point of clarification. I thought it was the whole of the stone and the black. It was 25.
No. If I read the definition again, display area is anything capable of presenting a sign face exclusive of the frame and standard. We have to make an interpretation as to whether the stone is a surface capable of presenting a sign. I think it's safe to say that the black is the sign area. Hence, I am willing to support a motion that approves the application with the display area to wit, the black metal, reduced to 25 square feet compliant. Or listen to any other different motion, but I think we're at that time.
I would support a motion like that.
My only concern is the blade signs, and I think they're going to look wimpy. That's my considered opinion. So it's hard for me to vote for something that I think the design needs an improvement. I'm not sure exactly what my position is to give that advice.
We may not get a second to the chairman's motion, and in that case, you could present your own motion, and we could see if that passes. Those are the options.
I'll
I have not
second.
actually made a motion yet. As chair, I,
Suggested motion.
right. And strictly speaking, our rules of order do not require a second, but we just do it as a course. So right now, the table is entertaining motions from anyone. Hearing none, I will move to approve the application as presented, provided the display area of the entry sign is reduced to 25 square feet.
And I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We will move on. Thank you. I think we can talk to you. No, go ahead. Come to the mic, though. We'll certainly entertain a question.
So, I understand the 25 square feet, and obviously, we had talked to staff, and we had an idea that that could be a possibility in the outcome, and we have looked at that as being an outcome. But what I'm asking you is this, would it have changed anything if we somehow used the existing sign and retrofitted it to include that? Because wouldn't that at that point be grandfathered in, or?
Well, I read
Do you
more.
follow what I'm asking?
I read more closely, and I can't tell you how we might have addressed a hypothetical.
I know that I'm after the
But
fact
I
here.
think Sandra was spot on about the findings, because the section I cited about providing an exception for illegally non-conforming, it follows on that any sign approved shall not be altered, modified, removed, or replaced without going through a process. So I think Sandra was spot on that any modification to that sign.
Yeah.
I think there was some statement that the board might have been more forgiving of that exception than an entirely new structure, but that's speculation on my
Yeah,
part.
I
You're
agree.
certainly free to present a new application.
No, I understand that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We will move on to staff and board reports. And before general, it's time to elect. We have once a year, we need to elect a chair and vice chair. I think there are two ways we can go about this. In the past, it's wait and listen for nominations. We can do that, or we can allow people to express an interest.
Or we take out one chair and everybody goes around to the music. Person left standing
I like
is-
that, I like that.
So, anyone care to nominate someone, or alternatively, just express an interest?
I will make it easier by saying I will, as the newest person, I will bow out quickly and
As well,
quietly.
Wait a second.
I don't want to be chair.
Would you consider continuing, Jason?
I won't refuse it. I'm not going to give you a Sherman speech. But as I've said, I think it's helpful for organizations like this to have regular turnover.
How often do we
And
do
I've
this?
seen that in the past, there seems to be, because people are considerate of others' feelings, that they tend to not want to not renominate the incumbent.
Well, this is only my second meeting, and I've seen you
So-
get such a grasp of the parliamentary
But-
rules and everything else. I think you should continue.
But I want to make sure the table is cleared. Matt Egos.
I will go ahead as the next senior person on there and say that I think you're doing a good job. And since we do have a largely new board, I would nominate you to continue on for the next term, which is, we just do it by year, right?
That's right. Well, you're very kind. No other interest.
I don't want to be chair. I would be interested in being vice chair, but I don't want to be chair.
Done. Okay.
Is there any, let's nominate Mr. Anglin to be vice chair?
Sounds good.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Can we approve both by unanimous consent?
Sure.
Great, no objection.
Then I'd
We'll
be
move
a
on.
chair in training.
There you go.
Now you've got more experience than I do already. What did Groucho say? Don't join a club that would have you as a member. Right.
What am I doing here?
Sandra, anything to report from staff?
Well, last week at the town council meeting, they heard a proposal for a wine tasting room and a winery on the McGrath property. and it renewed a discussion of whether we've reached our saturation point with wine tasting rooms. So on September 21st, we're taking that discussion back to the council and giving them an opportunity to change the current case-by-case processing of applications that they're doing, either by deciding on more stringent regulations for wine tasting rooms, setting a cap, and maybe considering a moratorium. And if a moratorium is in place, then that application for the McGrath property would be placed on hold until there's some certainty gained as to this. What that would also do is put the rezone on the parcel south of Gates Estates on hold, not for the rezone. The rezone could move forward, but any potential use as a wine tasting would be put on hold. And then any other most certain and anticipated projects would go through the same, have the same fate. So
That'd be
we're
based on a
interested in seeing-
moratorium, right?
Based on a moratorium. So we don't know what option the council will elect, but it could change the pace of seeing design review applications if that's the basis of the use. Otherwise, we did not have the Washington Square R&D kitchen before you tonight, and that's because they ran into a snag with the Caltrans right-of-way and a proposal of theirs to move the driveway 100 feet into that right-of-way. So now they're redesigning the project to avoid those issues in their entirety. They're hoping to bring back a revision for the October meeting of the ZDRB.
I'm curious about, because the entrance to the parking lot is within 100 feet of 29, isn't it?
No, it's just outside that 100-foot,
So they were moving it to the corner?
closer. They were wanting to realign it in a straight configuration rather than that loop, so that they could site a building a little easier.
Get more space back in the property?
Presumably, that's why the loop is there.
I would say so, exactly.
Right,
That is the
exactly.
exact reason it is there. So they had a meeting down with Caltrans, and they tried to get them to agree. No luck.
Yeah, Caltrans doesn't like that.
And they decided that it's in their interest to stay outside of that rather than asking Caltran to abandon their point of access control at that location, or to try some other exception with them. So,
What is a point of access control?
on highways, whenever there's ingress or egress, it's considered point of access control. It generally applies to more to driveways than to intersections, and that's why there would be consideration of abandoning it at that point. But that's a long, drawn-out process, and I know they want to get moving with their proposal, so.
Sounds like they want to fast-track this, don't they? So they'll essentially work around anything like
Yeah.
that.
My thought is that they'd like to get started on, with construction in the spring, so they have a lot to do to get to that point. And any Caltrans delay will certainly impact that.
You're, in Yountville, we have the moratorium on grading, as in other parts of the valley? Or-
It's not a
or
moratorium, but there is a time of the year when
October
grading is
15th
not
to
allowed.
April 1st, yeah.
And that's a flexible date if we haven't had rain or there are no issues. The Public Works Director can allow, and Town Engineer can allow grading on an individual case-by-case basis. But generally, it's October 15th, is it to April 15th? Another project we've been working with is VITA. We sent a code enforcement letter to them because of the weeds and the other items and equipment that have been abandoned and strewn about the site. So they're in the process of cleaning that up and possibly creating some sort of enclosure in a discrete location on the property for those items rather than moving them. They still haven't pulled a foundation permit or a building permit, so that is still on hold, and we don't know the long-term fate of that property.
When does their plan review approval expire?
I don't know an exact date on that, but
It's been a year, hasn't it?
I know the building inspector is in contact with them on what they need to do to keep that active. So it is still active. I'm thinking October, but I don't know why that's popping into my head. October is Gordon's expiration date, so I might be confusing them.
But Gordon's pulled a permit. I don't think Vida's pulled a permit, right? They've just had the approval. So it's like a 5-year window, I think.
No, the
No.
design review is good for 5 years. Once the building permit is approved, you have,
They submitted for a
180
permit and
days.
they were approved.
yes,
Oh, I
but
didn't
they
even
haven't
know
pulled the
that.
permit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because I imagine it's a quite expensive permit with impact fees and connection fees, isn't it?
Yeah, we'd like them to pull that permit.
Oh, but vacation plans?
We've done all the
They haven't
work.
come to pay for it, yeah,
Right.
essentially.
Well, we want them to pay for it and do work, because we think that it's a detriment to the town to have this vacant parcel where there was once a building, and especially given the state of the property being so unkempt and neglected, really.
You have to walk in the middle of the street to get around the property right now.
That's true.
Which is really unfortunate how they left it.
Very much so. I think that's it with my board reports. Unless you have any questions.
Anything to add?
Just a quick question. What, for general knowledge, what is our role with all this controversy about the tasting rooms? I mean, it's in the paper, everybody's whining about it all the time.
So to speak, one.
Well, no pun intended, sniveling is probably a better word. But I mean, what can we do about it? This board?
We made recommendations previously. We discussed this 6 months ago, and sent several recommendations to the council. I think they included both support for the retail diversity policy as perhaps a way to tamp down the applications. My suggestion was and remains to put a cap on the number of use permits and then make them fungible, like a liquor license, so that they could be bought and sold, subject to, site-specific use permits.
I mean, if this was San Francisco, like where I came from, everybody would be complaining that every other site was a nail salon
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
or a Starbucks, but most of the nail salons is the big complaint. And it just seems like if they've done their homework, if the investors have done their market research, if they want to put the money together, what's the problem?
You need to be at the meeting on the 21st.
Yeah,
Is your second.
that's what it sounds like.
No, I think it's going to be a
And
lively
speak.
discussion
Which
because
meeting? Oh, the
the
council
people
meeting?
feel
Yeah,
both
I'll be
ways.
here.
And speak.
I'm sorry, Rob.
I said I think it's going to be a lively discussion because I think people feel both ways about it.
If they're so upset about it, just stay away from them. I suspect nobody's going to them anyhow.
Yeah, but it's the,
I'm sorry.
Well,
I
I mean-
didn't mean to
It's all right.
be opinionated. I'm
No,
just
no,
trying to figure out
no.
what's
it's the
our
current,
role.
but it's the current wine
actually, I
tasting
don't- we
rooms
don't
who
have
don't
a
want
role.
anymore as well.
Oh,
mean,
I see.
It's very
You
You guys
convenient when
were
you're already
giving
there.
your recommendations. Was it the council asking for advice from
Yes.
ZDRB about
Yes.
your comments about it?
Yes. I
It
think,
wasn't a particular project. It was just asking ZDRB about what you felt about this.
Yes.
I think part of it's tied up in the ordinance has this persistent thing that hasn't worked for 20 years about local serving businesses.
Right.
And that's complicating, in my opinion, this review of tasting rooms, because particularly in the south end of town, there's this preference for local serving businesses, and the town has gone through some real contortions to say that a headhunter is a local serving businesses, because he may source an employee, or, not to pick on him, Steve Gordon, a delightful man. I remember the public hearing where, several people in town have his paintings. So it's complicated, not, I think, just by whether it's wine tasting and retail diversity, but they're wrestling with we're supposed to have a preference for local serving businesses, but that's not.
But there's not
working.
enough people here to support one.
But they're trying to resolve both of those issues at once. And
I think
And
Lucas-
on that note, though, there was the council workshop that was held to discuss this residential
The land
serving
use
commercial
complaint.
issue. That, too, is being brought back to council on the 21st, bringing trying to distill the recommendations of the council that they think the time has passed for that. We can't be relying on local serving businesses because it doesn't exist.
Well, and that was the consensus of the council members at the end of that workshop, was that there is no, other than maybe,
Grass.
If you do your,
that's right.
Yeah.
There are no
And the
local
den.
serving
if you do your
businesses.
market
It's sort of
analysis,
like
there's no
been this
market.
antique thing that's been around for a long time, and it's the town has grown around it, and it doesn't,
I'm having trouble understanding the objection to it. Like Gerard, and they got a beautiful facility, and their corporate offices are there. You know, you can go tell Gerard to move your corporate offices because you don't want a wine tasting room there anymore?
well, I think.
Napa Style's got a wine tasting room in there. You're going to go tell him you can't do that? I mean, I don't.
That's tied to the restaurant, but that's what we're...
Of course, it's all tied together. That's the whole point.
Well, I think moratoriums are sometimes needed when there's some adverse effect from the cumulative effect of all these entities. In this case, it's tasting rooms. I mean, we haven't had any public mayhem. We haven't had any people fighting in the middle of the street.
My backyard was a little crazy.
Was it? That's because of you. Ban him from the town.
Mrs. James banned me from the house.
Yeah. But so I think that it's going to be a discussion, and I personally, just so you all know, I'm not in favor of a moratorium. I think that, the town and Sandra and Bob look at each one of these tasting rooms in its entirety as a set-alone entity, and I think the retail diversity and the bringing those tasting rooms back into the enjoyment of the town is more important than setting a moratorium. I don't think that we should set a number. I think that the number of tasting rooms should be self-limiting because they can't compete.
Because it's
there's
capitalism.
too many of them.
Because it's the way...
That's what'll set the limit. But I don't think that we need to do that. I think that what we need to do is we need to bring more components that are serving the enjoyment of everyone that's here, not just us, but the people that are visiting.
Yes.
And I've used the example of, what's the name of it? Summerston on Thursday nights. They have music in the courtyard. I think that's wonderful. I think that's a real positive effect. That's what we need more of. I don't think a moratorium's the right direction.
Council hasn't indicated it's leaning in the direction of a moratorium. We wanted to give them action at this point because they've been batting the idea around for a while. They've always been on the side of market forces and looking at things on a case-by-case basis. Lately, however, it's the people at council meetings airing their opinions. It's the letters to the editors. So I think there's been this situation created that they need to at least address again. And so who knows if it'll be any different than before.
Was that land use meeting, we only got through a third of it, or
Right.
was there
Yes.
planning to finish it?
Yes. The other item I was going to mention that may be of interest to you is that we're going to present the open space and FAR issues, I believe, in this next council meeting. It's going to be planning night at the council, so.
On the 21st,
Uh-huh.
it's going to be a huge amount of stuff going on.
It's heavy on planning items and not about anything else. Or
And,
much anything.
and was that was a public meeting, right? The land use one?
Yes, yeah, it was in the paper and everything. Everyone was invited, it was posted everywhere.
Yeah.
That's it.
Cool.
Shall we adjourn?
Signing off.
Great idea.
Objection?
Yeah.
Good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Stay safe. See you next time.
Do I get to keep this?